gentlemen, you'll have to take our word for it, but the dead tree over there that has that large bird on it, that is a young bald eagle before its head has turned white.
Bald eagle?
Yes, but not with the white head.
Right there.
That's how they hide from the bald eagles, blending in with the environment. Yeah, because they won't let you on the path.
You'd rather the dogs poop on your own track than poop on your walkway.
Walk through the place today, imagining it not how we live here and now, but how they lived 280 years ago. They being the Spanish soldiers of the 1740s. For St. Augustine, Florida of the mid-18th century, that community was a military town. Soldiers and their families were living there. At one point in time, there were as many as 500 registered soldiers, plus their wives and their children. And for St. Augustine, Florida, that was the place where you served in the military, so did your father, so did your grandfather and your great-grandfather. You all served in St. Augustine. You grow up and join the army at about 15 or 16 years of age. Official Spanish records say you can't join until you turn 18, but we have records of younger people joining up. We also have records of soldiers up into their 80s. And your job as a St. Augustine soldier is, of course, to work at that larger fort in the city. But that's right across the street from your house. That building was run like we use fire stations today. 30 people would leave their home, they would go across the street, and they'd work in that fort for about 1 to 2 days, then they would go back home. So these soldiers rotated everywhere, but out of that vast network of outer defenses for St. Augustine, Florida, all that still remains is this building right here and a barely recognizable ruin of that outpost down near the Tallahassee area. But for the soldiers, when they came here, it was 7 guys for 30 days. 14 miles south of town by how the highway works today, 18 miles if you take the water into St. Augustine, but you come down here for that month, and the primary job is to watch that inlet and make sure no surprises sail in it. Enemy ships that could be a threat to the city, soldiers walking in, anything like that. But when the Spanish engineers decided to build this structure, they put it right here so they could use the natural environment to do most of the work. The large warships that could threaten this building and literally blow it out of the water could not get close enough to fire their weapons without hitting the beaches. And for 80 years, this watchtower stood guard over the Matanzas Inlet. It has never been shot at, soldiers never died out here, and every record we're aware of that this place fired cannons, whoever they shot at turned around and left, no one ever returned fire, and the simplest way to describe the success record of this building is just a police car on the side of the road flipping on the light switch. That is how effective it was. And most of the logs describe these soldiers wandering the beaches and picking up wayward shipwrecked sailors that were wandering the coast, helping them into here to recover, and then getting those people into St. Augustine. Because what's standing behind me, yes, it is the original Fort Matanzas, but you're looking at it after a major restoration project of the 1930s. Basically, the building saw 80 years of active service. The United States acquires Florida in 1821. A U.S. military officer comes out here and surveys the new building we just got. Except when he's looking at it, he found out that the soldiers that were still working in here were camped outside in tents because the structure leaked so badly. He also came up to the conclusion that there's no need to guard Matanzas Inlet anymore now that St. Augustine and Florida is part of the United States. And the decision was made to abandon this structure, and it was still U.S. military owned, but it sat completely neglected for close to 100 years. By the time the building was being handed over to the National Park Service, trees were growing out of it, cracks were all over it, sections had fallen off, the Century Tower was completely gone. And what you are looking at is a 1930s President Franklin Roosevelt project of restoring Fort Matanzas, part of his New Deal plan to give people jobs during the Great Depression. For the Spanish soldier, though, that came out here in the mid-18th century, their structure had white plastered walls, red window and door frames, a red Century Tower, and there's a dirt floor in a room today. That was actually a cement floor when the soldiers were walking around in there. So the building was in much better shape to think about the lived-in conditions. But on the flip side, the Spanish described the fort sitting on the beach in high tide, hitting it every single day. What you're standing on, what we are all standing on, is filled dirt dumped in by the National Park Service. We also built a seawall around the structure, which is this white line here in the grass, and buried about 4 feet of the building just to stop the high tides from hitting it. An interesting random fact, we have an officer's log from the 1790s. And in that log entry, the officer says he is watching the southeast corner of the fort's foundation washing out due to the high tides. That corner over there, and as a matter of fact, 100 years later, that is the side of the building where the entire gun platform just broke off of the structure. You'll find a photograph of that up inside. But yeah, definitely try to imagine the lifestyle in which they lived. Imagine the structure as it was when they lived here. And when you're up on the gun platform by the 3 cannons pointing south, look in the direction they are pointing. 200 years ago, you would be looking out into open ocean. Matanzas Inlet, the whole reason why this place exists, has moved a half a mile away, all natural, since the building's construction. But you're welcome to explore every level of the structure. Regular soldiers' quarters on the first level, officer's room on the next. The officer's room has a wooden vertical ladder to the roof. It goes through a very narrow opening in the ceiling. You all are welcome to use that ladder today. But if ladders are not a normal thing for you, that is not the one to test out. The hatchway is very awkward to climb over, and handholds can get a little awkward when you go up through the hole as well. So be careful as you explore.
Oh.
Rabies are bad.
Good.
They're gonna be like,